Okay, our next session is Build Once, Integrate Anywhere, Scaling Data Delivery for Multiple Missions. With us is Mike Carley, Federal Solutions Engineer with StreamSets.
I'm really excited because it's not all the problems you guys are talking about, especially the data operations group that's in the CDAO. Um, that's the stuff we've been living and breathing for the last 5 to 7 years here at StreamSets. Um, the kind of nugget I want to leave in your brain, so to speak, about all this data and analytics stuff is that it is complex. I'm not going to try and lie to you about that, but it's more akin to manufacturing, like complex manufacturing, like you're trying to put together like a Toyota Tacoma on a factory line, or building a Tesla or something like that. It is complex, but it doesn't have to be like space age, you need a PhD kind of level of complexity. It's complex in that very specialized teams are producing subsets of a larger product. And when you look at a report and dashboard and you're making decisions off of this stuff, that's really what's going on, is that ultimately you're kind of, oh, sorry. Ultimately, what you're doing is you're these assembling subcomponents for a larger operational whole. So I don't think anybody needs to be convinced that delivering data with speed and need of confidence, or with the speed of need, as they say, and with confidence is key. I'm sure you guys all have the 10, 15, 20, even 30-year veteran of a particular subject matter inside your department. And you guys are looking through the different BI dashboards, and he's like, well, that's wrong. I know that's wrong. And it's only because they've been doing it for so long that they can kind of see what's going on. And that's the level to which the data quality needs to be prepared. And that's the level of confidence that you need to kind of have instilled in people, that they can look at it, know it's a source of truth, know that it's clean, know the lineage of it and how it's been prepared and delivered for them. And so there's a couple of different ways to do that, which I'll show you. But really, it's the quickest way to destroy confidence in your organization is to put data out there in a dashboard that's fundamentally wrong, or have things change and have the numbers not be representative of the truth. So what we found ultimately is that there's this concept of data operations, and data operations is a set of practices and technology that operationalize data integration to ensure the resilience and agility in the face of data drift. And that's the key word, in the face of data drift. I don't think getting data from an on-prem system to a bucket somewhere in a cloud provider is terribly difficult. I think one of the things that is difficult is a lot of the times the right hand is not talking to the left hand. And so things will go ahead and change. And when things do change, all the reporting that you've done, all the models that you've made up until that point, suddenly are not able to cope with that change. And so data ops is a set of practices and technologies that are designed to work together to help you cope with that change. So that way you can continue to deliver analytics and data at the speed of need with that high level of confidence. So even that 30-year veteran goes, yep, even though they changed the system, it's still the accurate representation of what's going on the ground. So from a data ops world, from our perspective, this is kind of how we see the world. We have our data sources, we have our object stores and our landing areas, and then we have our data warehouses, and then we have our downstream consumers. And if you look at it, it's a lot like a manufacturing kind of system. We have our raw inputs, we have our steel delivered to the factory, we have our rubber delivered to the factory, and then we're going to put it through a discrete series of processes with sub teams, and they're going to go ahead and make some amazing finished products for us to go use. That's going to make our lives a lot easier. I don't know about you, but I don't like walking to the store for 5 miles and carrying my groceries home. I'd much rather drive and do that. It's the same thing here. So these data sources from the StreamSets world, they could be on-prem, they could be cloud stores, they could be legacy systems. It doesn't really matter to us. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and ingest that data for you. And the problem that you've seen in the past is that people use multiple tools for different patterns, and this ultimately slows the delivery and they get kind of behind. And then they go ahead and they say, well, that team over there, their offices are on the West Coast or on the East Coast. They didn't really tell us they're going to go ahead and do this update. They weren't really aware that, our MOU was still in effect and we're still sharing data. And it ends up becoming kind of a real nightmare, because what you want to do is you want to have a pervasive view of what's going on inside your organization, or more importantly, you want to ingest data that's really beyond your change management review board. You want to ingest data for a more pervasive view of the world, but you don't own or control that data. And so what'll happen is you'll see things like schema change all the time. Somebody somewhere will change something, and it will break all of the integrations that you've written that take you from the initial place that you're taking the data from to your first raw layer of staging, and that will break. And if you're lucky, your downstream reports will just show null or a zero or something. They will be lucky enough to break. Worst case scenario is you will see your platforms, your reports basically display inaccurate data, and then you will go action what you see off of those reports, and that's really scary. It's like that old Hemingway quote: "It's not what you don't know that gets you in trouble; it's what you know that ain't so that gets you in trouble." And if you're talking about real systemic risk to your organizations, it's things like that, making sure that your pipelines, when they break well. The next thing is there's storage layer changes that'll occur. Somebody will change from like an Oracle database to SQL Server because Oracle's too expensive or something, or AWS becomes too expensive, so then they go to Azure, or vice versa. It's pretty common. The other thing is they'll roll the credentials every month to keep things secure, so your connections will ultimately have to change. Oh, and by the way, they'll do a data format change. Instead of CSV, we're doing Parquet now, or something like that. And then often you'll see replatforming, depending on who the CIO is or the CTO. It's not uncommon to have them get wined and dined, and then suddenly they get these really steep discounts for the next 5 years. And then they'll go ahead and say, hey, we're moving all of our stuff from AWS or on-prem to GCP, or we're moving to Azure. And it happens often. And so you'll see those platform changes, and usually there'll be version changes along with that. And then there'll be customer request changes. So they'll say, hey, I don't like seeing this formatted this way. I want to change it here. So really what you're looking at is part of the reason why it's so difficult to scale data and analytics is you're fighting all of these changes all the time, from all of these places with not a whole lot of organizational control. It becomes a lot easier when you own all of this stuff from farm to table, so to speak. But we live in a world where we don't, where we have to play nice with other offices and other agencies, and we have to share and kind of cope with their changes. So this is what data ops was really designed to do. And StreamSets has been in the trenches for the last, oh gosh, we were founded about 7-8 years ago now. And we've been in the trenches kind of figuring out how to cope with all of these various changes at all of these points. So what you're going to find is, building these integrations, that can take some time. That's okay. But really, it's the operations and maintenance costs that will kill you. It's the reworking of those breakages of those pipelines, and trying to, more importantly, figure out where something changed, because nobody's really going to tell you where these things changed. And so you'll spend so much time trying to figure out what went wrong and where. And we have intelligent data pipelines that will cope with those changes. So even if something does break, we'll usually be able to tell you where almost immediately. And then the next thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to operate and monitor these pipelines. So that means you want real-time metrics. That means you want to set service level agreements. That means you want to set data quality rules. That means you want to do a whole bunch of stuff. You want to do ACLs on the individual pipelines. You want to scale them efficiently so you consume just the right amount of hardware that you need. There's a whole bunch of operational capabilities that come with these integrations that are necessary. And so this fundamentally new approach that we call data ops, there's a couple of key tenets if you're going to really try and deliver data ops well. And the first one is you need a single experience for all. It's really hard to have people mentally change their headspaces to go from one tool to another. And so we found that when you do that, you actually speed up delivery way faster. It's incredible how much faster you can speed up delivery when you're not jumping in between tools, trying to troubleshoot 3 different tools at one time because there's an error somewhere along the pipe. And then the same thing is you want to build it for change. Change is the only constant in this world, maybe taxes too. But that's really something that people often forget. They're, the scope of the contract that people are brought on board for example, is extraordinarily narrow, and it's designed for A to B, and then before you know it, A has changed and B has gone on to C. And so it becomes a very different world. And then often these integrations have no operational controls. They're just a single script somebody wrote or some open source tool somebody downloaded from the internet. And then as far as they're concerned, they met the requirements of the contract. So there's no actual operational controls. There's no, mission management dashboards or anything like that. So the repeatability of delivering all these data sources for multiple mission sets make it really impossible to actually serve a wider community. And really, that's what this data analytics stuff is really designed to do. We're all going to save time by, working from a single source of truth. And then finally, vendor lock-in needs to be a thing of the past. It really does. So you need to run on any platform you want, anywhere, anytime. And so far as I can understand, StreamSets is one of the few providers that actually allows you to do that. And there's a bunch of different places that we've been able to be really successful in doing that. For cloud migrations, British Telecom is probably our big claim to fame. They re-platformed 3 times within 18 months. They went from an on-prem system to AWS to GCP. They moved about 10,000 pipelines each time. It was absolutely insane. Similar thing for the Department of Defense. So it's funny, we talk about CDAOs. I don't know if you guys know of the CDAO change over there, but StreamSets is the tool of choice for all the auditing, the financial audit that the DoD goes through. It's about $2.8 trillion worth of assets that all flow through StreamSets pipelines to effectively conduct that audit. It's over 300 different master systems of record that we continually ingest data from, and there's no change management review board over there. They take the data as is, they cleanse it, they use the data drift capabilities to deliver quality data regardless of what the inputs are from the service branches. And so from that, they can effectively conduct the audit. For data lakes, there's GlaxoSmithKline in the state of Ohio. That's COVID reporting and new drug development. GlaxoSmithKline actually scales our pipelines to run about 1 to 2 million pipelines every day. At Shell and NatWest, which is used to be called the Royal Bank of Scotland, they use it for a lot of AI and large-scale Spark-based processing. And then, commercial companies like IBM and Intel, they use it for, real-time threats, analysis, cybersecurity, all this kind of stuff. It's a very unique world. StreamSets has data pipelines are kind of like probably the least sexy area of technology. It's kind of like plumbing. But as far as we see, an integration is an integration. A pipeline is the data specialty the specialness of the data is kind of lost on us. We're a very effective transport mechanism for building the necessary data connections to build those analytics. So as I mentioned before, the cloud migration use case is a big one for Booz Allen and the Department of Defense. But basically, it's a similar auditing use case in the Department of Defense. It's basically paid for itself when they found about $300 million or $350 million worth of unaccounted property. And again, if you're looking to build an internal use case for these tools, the auditing use case is a great one because you can get a more comprehensive picture, you can scale it effectively, and the results of your audit generally pay for itself. And so with this data delivery kind of platform, it's been incredibly effective and successful. And without this, there would have to be some extraordinary organizational changes without that, because the data drift would cause some very serious problems to the quality of the auditing data, because stuff would be breaking left and right all the time. Moving over, another big one is Humana that we've been really successful at. If you guys want, we have architecture presentations from the C-suite at Humana on this front. But basically, we are the strategic data pipeline tool of choice over there, and it's really been incredibly effective in the healthcare space for them. Again, to prevent or to basically create a more comprehensive view of their service providers, of their subscribers, of everything really. And so what they're able to do now is to operate a real-time organization. So when somebody gets a particular diagnosis, when they see the ICD-10 codes come through for a new subscriber, they are able to trigger other pipelines around things like Medicaid taxis and things like that. So that way they can tell based on the diagnosis in real time the next appointments they're going to need a Medicaid taxi for, and then they can actually intervene and get that person to the next appointment to reduce the overall cost of healthcare delivery for that person. So that kind of gives you an overview of data ops, what we've been able to achieve by implementing data ops, what our mission is. I'll kind of stop with the slide where I want to show you what it looks like, what the platform actually looks like. So this is our control plane. This is where StreamSets kind of lives and breathes. What I want to kind of show you real quick is there's a whole bunch of speeds and feeds, and unfortunately don't really have time to get into the thick of it as much as I might like, because from here it gets extraordinarily technical. And if you don't have a data integration background, it's pretty easy to get lost in the sauce. But one thing I do want to show you is this concept of a topology. And so a topology is really just a series of data pipelines that work together. This topology, a great way to think about it is you want to see the data supply chain that goes into a particular dashboard. Well, this can be it for you. There's a whole lot of intricacies around these data integration rules and pipelines and stuff like that and how they scale. But this can be your farm to table representation of how data arrives at your reports, at the dashboards that you go ahead and make decisions off of. And so usually what I want to walk you through is there's a life cycle to basically integrating a data silo. And usually the life cycle is, hey, we have this old legacy data system. It's in this silo. We want to integrate it into everything else. And so historically, you want to build maybe like a data lake. That's one way to do it. You could do query federation as another way of doing it. You could do point-to-point integrations with different microservices like MuleSoft or web methods or something like that. But this is specifically for building like a data lake or a data warehouse. And so the first step to getting that data silo to not really be a silo anymore is building that integration. The first step in that integration is usually doing a bulk export. And so what you want to do is you want to trigger that bulk export, and then from that bulk export, when that's completed, you want to capture any changes to that system and send it off to wherever you're going to aggregate your data. And then from that point, then you're going to want to do what's called a slowly changing dimensions operation. And don't get too worried. It's just a $10 word for taking in the changes over time and merging them in with the master data set to get a complete view. And so you get the history of all the changes, the most recent transactions. So, you might have somebody who flips a switch of being a subscriber, no longer a subscriber, being a subscriber, no longer a subscriber, and this will get you whatever the last active record was. And they want to do that on a regular basis. And then you have, basically an updated master data set that you write to. And then, oh, by the way, I want to orchestrate all of these pipelines to work together. And so from that orchestration, we've created this topology. And so at the topology level, at the data supply chain level, only StreamSets can actually allow you to attach service level agreements to different points in the data supply chain. Now, why this is special is because the platform itself, we fundamentally believe that the people who have access to the reports should have access to the data that made those reports, that goes into those reports. I don't need to give them the full developer experience, but they should have the ability to go see where their data came from and how it was processed. And so with this, we can actually attach ACLs to the particular topology. So if I have healthcare people and I have finance people, the healthcare people can go look at the healthcare topologies. The finance people can go look at the auditing topologies themselves. And then for those people that are stakeholders to those dashboards, they can be subscribed to those SLAs. So it can be done on an email group. It can be done on a particular community of interest. And it becomes really easy to give people a greater stake in, hey, this is how your data was provided to you. These are the places that it came from. This is how it's aggregated together. And then also, we will give you a real-time view of to how that all those pipelines are working together. And so it becomes really easy from an operational perspective to go ahead and just turn something on, say, yes, I want to go ahead and orchestrate these pipelines. Yes, I want to go ahead and do this bulk export. I want to write this to S3, I want to write it to Azure, I want to write it to Aurora, I want to write it to our on-prem system. It becomes incredibly easy to do this. And then from that, you can offer additional confidence mechanisms like SLAs, like alerting, like the ability to see what the developers are building or the entire data flow supply chain. And so what's really nice about this is this particular topology can be replicated super easy per data silo that you want to actually do the ingestion from. All you need to do, as far as we're concerned here at StreamSets, is take the connection information, change the destinations. The actual logic that you've built for these pipelines can be replicated super easy. At a pipeline level, we offer these things called pipeline fragments, and these pipeline fragments are just pre-made sections of pipeline logic. So building pipelines can be a democratized thing. It ends up becoming like assembling Legos, and so you just change the pre-made destinations that we have for you. You just change the destinations, maybe change the connection information. It becomes extraordinarily easy to operate these kinds of pipelines. So that way, at a lower skill level, people can start to take more ownership of the data that they work on. And it doesn't have to be this black art where somebody hands you like a War and Peace size novel of some Python code that they wrote. It can become a much more accessible thing. At the same time, the pipelines are operationalized. You have a built-in resiliency against data drift when people go ahead and change things. And finally, it does this organizational end run that people don't have to get into these food fights and year-long negotiations for different memorandums of understanding. So that way they can actually go ahead and share data and go make effective decisions without having to focus on the actual operations and maintenance of little changes and breakages. Don't get me wrong. I mean, we're not going to remove that, forever, 100% of the time, but it allows you to shift the time from fixing breakages and fighting fires all the time to actually going forth and innovating. And this is one of the few platforms that'll actually do that for you. And it's built for data operations, and it's going to be key to actually being one of those organizations that makes data-driven decisions. This is the hard part. This is the day-to-day stuff that people end up needing to get done about as well as they can. So I'll pause here. I'll hand it back over to Michael to see if there's any questions.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, is there a way to programmatically scale the creation of these pipelines and integration tests?
Yeah, there actually is. That's a great question. So if you want to see how that's done, GlaxoSmithKline, so we'll do StreamSets, GSK. We have a case study that they did. So I mentioned before they run about 1 million to 2 million pipelines a day. What's really interesting is the real world's effect of that, of basically combining a programmatic ingestion layer, is they sped up drug discovery by a couple of years. And so StreamSets has a software development kit and a test framework that'll allow you to do that. And that's what GSK uses, is the SDK. So for those 1 million to 2 million pipelines a day, I'd say 99% of them are built by the SDK. And there's a 6-man team over there that builds and manages the SDK implementation. It's really some wild stuff. The chief data officer did a presentation at our Data Ops Summit a while back. That's a great resource if you guys want to check it out.
Okay, and then the last question is, of all those customers you mentioned, which represent like the top of the term you use, data ops, and the maturity of that?
Yeah, I'd say GlaxoSmithKline is a good one. There's a bank in Norway called DNB. I'm sure there aren't too many customers on the call who are customers of DNB, but it's one of the largest banks in Norway. And so the programmatic creation of pipelines is probably one of the points of zenith, one of the high points of data operations. And basically what they did was they created a self-service layer using the SDK. So you can if you can programmatically create pipelines and pre-made transformations, then the stuff at either end of the transformation, right, is your own homemade destination and the place you want to get the data from. So what they do is they just create a series of drop-down menus like, hey, these are the data sources you can pick from. This is what's in the data sources. These are the transformations we can run on your behalf for you. And then these are the places we can deliver the data for you on your behalf. And so it becomes really easy to have a self-service layer for people who are less technical, like auditors, who know the data sources, who know the ML models they want to pull up that predict fraud or something like that. And then they want it written out to like an Excel spreadsheet or you know, a OneDrive location. And so that's where they want the data to be delivered. And that self-service layer really acts to unlock stuff. And so it's been built in other places, but D&B is one of the places I'm allowed to talk about it.
Well, Mike, I can't thank you enough for sharing what StreamSets does with the audience today. So we're going to go to our first poll question of the day. Would you like to continue the discussion on how to break down data silos and data ops maturity, as Mike mentioned? Your answers are yes or not at this time. Again, we'd like to thank Mike and StreamSets, which I believe is now a division of Software AG. And if you could answer this poll, that'd be great.